Do you want to help a stray animal? Just subscribe, like, comment, and watch until the end, and you'll be helping save a precious life. Every action makes a real difference. It sometimes amazes me how much we see from our quiet corners, how the smallest moments between us held the greatest meaning. My name is Oliver, though you called me Ollie when no one else was around. I never told you this, but the way your voice changed when it was just us two was the sound I loved most in this world. I've been gone 3 months now, and I wonder if you've noticed how the kitchen floor still creaks in that spot by the refrigerator where I used to wait for my evening treats. I wonder if you still leave that small space on the left side of your pillow, the one you said was Ollie's spot, even though we both knew I'd eventually sprawl across the entire bed once you fell asleep. They say animals can't write letters, but what do humans know about the languages of the heart? So here I am, telling you everything I never could before, not with meows or purrs or the slow blinks that meant I love you in the only way I knew how to say it. I remember the day we met, though probably not the way you tell it. It was raining, that gentle, misty kind that makes everything smell like wet earth and possibility. You weren't looking for a cat. In fact, you had sworn off pets altogether after losing your Siamese, Mabel, the year before. Too painful, I heard you tell your daughter on the phone. I can't go through that again. You had come to the shelter that Thursday afternoon in October to drop off donations, old towels, a few cans of food, the pet carrier that had been gathering dust in your garage. I was in the back corner, half hidden behind my water dish. Unlike the kittens who pressed hopefully against their cage doors, I had learned to make myself invisible. 6 years old, with a notched ear and what the volunteers diplomatically called a challenging personality, I wasn't exactly adoption material, but something happened when you walked past. You stopped. Not dramatically, not with any indication you'd found what you were looking for. You just paused, your hand resting on the metal grate of my cage. "Well, aren't you the grumpy one?" you said quietly. I didn't move, didn't blink. The volunteer, Marissa with the bright pink fingernails, hurried over. "That's Oliver," she said. "He's been here almost 8 months. Bit of a loner." You made a small sound, something between a laugh and a sigh. "I know something about that," you said, and your eyes, those clear grey-blue eyes that would become my entire world, met mine. "He's not very sociable," Marissa continued. "Probably better as an only pet, and honestly, he might do best in a quiet home without an old lady who talks to herself." You finished, and there was something in your voice I recognized, a particular kind of aloneness that matched my own. I still don't know what made you take me home that day. Maybe it was grief, recognizing grief. Maybe it was the universe's way of putting 2 broken puzzles together to make something whole. Whatever it was, 3 hours later, I was sitting in a cardboard carrier on the passenger seat of your Buick, listening to you hum along to Carole King as we drove the 17 miles to what would become our home on Sycamore Lane. You didn't try to pet me those first few days. You set up my food bowl in the kitchen, showed me where the litter box was in the laundry room, and then you simply went about your business. No cooing, no forcing me onto your lap, no disappointment when I retreated under the sofa at the sound of the mailman's footsteps. That first night, I heard you on the phone. "He's not very friendly," you told your daughter, Beth. "But that's okay. We're just getting used to each other." What you didn't know was that I spent those nights watching you, the way you moved through rooms, the books you read, how you always turned the coffee mug twice before taking your first sip in the morning. I learned your routines before I ever let you learn mine. It was 3 weeks before I approached you voluntarily. You were sitting in that faded blue armchair by the window, reading with a throw blanket over your knees. The radiator was making that clicking noise that I later came to associate with winter evenings and comfort. I jumped onto the arm of the chair, not looking at you, pretending my arrival was simply a coincidence. You turned a page in your book, and said, without looking up, "Well, hello there, Mr. Oliver." And then you did something nobody had ever done. You kept reading. You didn't grab for me or exclaim or disrupt the fragile moment. You just made space, shifting slightly so there was room beside you if I wanted it. I did. That became our routine. Every evening at 8:15, after you'd washed the dinner dishes and put on your slippers, you'd settle into that chair with your book, and I'd appear, casually, as if I'd just happened to be passing through. You never mentioned that I showed up at exactly the same time each night. I never mentioned that you always had the chair's arm cleared for me. Eventually, those evenings extended into mornings. Me sitting on the bathroom counter while you applied your face cream, oil of Olay, always the same bottle with the pink cap. Then afternoons, me curled in the patch of sunlight near your knitting basket while you worked on those endless scarves for Beth's children. By our second winter together, I was sleeping on your bed. By the third, I had claimed the left pillow as my territory. And you, Eleanor Sullivan of 743 Sycamore Lane, previously known throughout Millfield as that private woman who keeps to herself, began talking to me. Not the way people usually talk to pets, the high-pitched baby talk or constant questioning. Are you hungry? Do you want out? No, you spoke to me like I was another person sharing your home. You told me about your day, about the arthritis that was making it harder to open jars, about the letter from your sister in Arizona that always made you a little sad for reasons you never explained. "Oliver," you'd say while chopping vegetables for soup, "Margaret thinks I should move to that retirement community in Scottsdale, says I'm too isolated here." You'd slide a piece of carrot my way. "What do you think about that?" I'd blink slowly, and you'd nod as if I'd given a profound answer. "That's exactly what I told her," you'd say, satisfied. "What I wish you knew is that during those 9 years, I wasn't just listening. I was memorizing. The way sunlight looked on your silver hair when you forgot to wear your gardening hat. How your hands, veined and spotted with age, still moved with such certainty when you played the piano on Sunday afternoons. The small sigh you made when you sank into a hot bath, which I monitored attentively from my perch on the closed toilet lid. You thought I was being protective. Really, I was collecting moments, storing them somewhere inside me, like a squirrel preparing for a winter I somehow knew would come. The changes happened so gradually that I doubt anyone else noticed. First, it was the keys. You'd put them in the refrigerator, then laugh when you found them next to the butter dish. Then it was names. You'd pause in the middle of stories about your teaching days, the names of students momentarily escaping you. "Senior moments," you told Dr. Whitman during your checkup, waving away his concerned expression. But I knew better. I watched you write notes to yourself and stick them on the bathroom mirror. I saw how you'd sometimes stand in the middle of a room, momentarily lost, before remembering what you'd come for. And I noticed how your daughter's visits became more frequent, her voice carrying that forced cheerfulness that humans use when they're worried but trying not to show it. The afternoon you came home from the neurologist, you didn't say anything. You sat in your blue chair without turning on a lamp, without reaching for a book. When I jumped up beside you, your hand found my fur, but your fingers were trembling. "Early-stage dementia," you finally whispered into the gathering darkness. "That's what they're calling it, Ollie." I pressed my head against your arm, and for the first time since you'd brought me home, you cried, not the quiet tears that sometimes appeared during sad movies, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook your whole body. I stayed completely still, letting your tears fall into my fur, knowing this was one hurt I couldn't hide from or hiss away. That night, you made a decision that you shared with me as we sat on the back porch, watching fireflies appear and disappear in the garden you tended so carefully. "I'm staying here, Oliver," you said firmly. "This is our home. They can help me figure out how to manage, but I'm not leaving, not yet." I rubbed against your ankles in agreement, relief flooding through me. I wasn't ready for change either. The next morning, you made a series of phone calls to Beth, to your doctor, to a service that would deliver groceries. You created new routines, wrote more notes, set alarms on the digital clock I'd always hated. You adapted, and I adapted with you. When you sometimes called me Mabel, I pretended not to notice. When you occasionally forgot to fill my water bowl, I learned to drink from the bathroom faucet, which you always left dripping slightly. And when you'd wake up confused in the middle of the night, my purring against your chest seemed to anchor you back to the present moment. Life changed, but we adjusted together, creating a new normal that was quieter, but still ours. Those last 2 years were different, but they held their own kind of beauty. We spent more time at home, less time with visitors. The bird feeder outside the kitchen window became our shared entertainment. You talked more, as if putting your thoughts into words helped keep them from slipping away. I listened more intently, understanding that these stories, repeated though they often were precious things you were entrusting to me. "Did I ever tell you about the summer I spent in Maine?" you'd ask, and I'd settle in to hear the tale of ocean waves and lobster boats for perhaps the 20th time, each telling slightly different, each equally true in its own way. What you didn't know was that as your memory began to fade, mine seemed to sharpen. I remembered everything for both of us, which pills were for morning and which for night, which days the cleaning lady came, how you liked your tea, honey but no milk, except on Sundays when you allowed yourself both. I became your calendar, your reminder, your constant. When you'd look confused about whether you'd eaten lunch, I'd either sit patiently by your empty plate, yes, you had, or lead you deliberately toward the kitchen, no, you hadn't. You thought it was coincidence. It wasn't. The day things changed between us was ordinary in every way. It was April, the windows open to let in the spring air that smelled of hyacinths from the garden. You were having a good day. You'd played the piano that morning, made yourself toast without burning it, even called Beth without my having to bring you the phone. We were sitting on the porch swing, your hand absently stroking my back, when you suddenly said, "You know, don't you?" I looked up at you, and for a moment, one crystalline, perfect moment, there was complete clarity in your eyes. "You've always known what I needed," you continued, your voice steady. "Before I knew it myself sometimes." I blinked slowly, my way of saying yes. "I think God sent you to me," you said, and then laughed softly. "Or whatever force arranges such things. I wasn't looking for you, but here you are, exactly when I needed someone who wouldn't mind if I repeated myself or forgot things or wasn't always the person I used to be." You scratched under my chin, finding that perfect spot that made my eyes close in contentment. "Thank you for not expecting me to stay the same," you whispered. "In all our years together, it was the only time I wished desperately that I could speak human words, that I could tell you how perfectly imperfect you were to me, how your changing mind didn't make you any less whole in my eyes. Instead, I pressed my forehead against your hand and purred louder than I ever had before, hoping somehow you would understand. I think you did. Summer turned to fall, and the changes accelerated. Beth visited more often, sometimes staying overnight. A woman named Lucia started coming 3 times a week to help with cooking and cleaning. Your doctor appointments multiplied. Through it all, our routines remained. Morning coffee, you, and fresh water, me. Afternoons in the garden when weather permitted. Evenings in the blue chair, though now you listen to audiobooks instead of reading, your glasses often forgotten on top of your head. I knew something was wrong that final Tuesday. You'd been more confused than usual, calling me by names that weren't mine, sometimes looking startled when I entered a room, as if you weren't expecting to see a cat in your house. Your hands, usually so gentle, had developed a slight tremor that made petting me a more haphazard affair. That night, you couldn't settle. You paced from room to room, picking things up and putting them down, starting sentences that trailed into silence. I followed at a careful distance, not wanting to trip you but needing to keep you in sight. When you finally sat on the edge of your bed, I jumped up beside you, and you looked at me with such confusion that my heart seemed to stop. "Hello there," you said politely as if addressing a stranger. "Are you visiting?" I meowed softly, butting my head against your elbow the way I always did at bedtime. For a moment, confusion clouded your face. Then something shifted, recognition dawning slowly like a winter sunrise. "Oliver," you said, relief flooding your voice. "My Ollie, I'm sorry, I got a little lost there." You lay down fully clothed on top of the covers, too tired to change into your nightgown. I curled against your side, purring steadily, willing warmth and comfort into your increasingly frail body. "I don't think I'm doing very well," you whispered into the darkness. I inched closer, resting my paw on your arm. "Beth wants me to move to that place with the nurses," you continued. "Maybe she's right. I'm not always here anymore, am I?" I purred louder, trying to anchor you to this moment. To me, to us. "Will you be okay?" you asked, and I realized with a start that you were worried about me. Even now, with your mind unraveling, you were thinking of my welfare. I don't know if cats can cry, but something inside me broke open that night. I stayed awake as you drifted into uneasy sleep, watching the rise and fall of your chest, memorizing the exact pattern of age spots on your hand, the curve of your earlobe, the soft whistling sound you made on exhale. Morning came, and with it Beth and the paramedics. You couldn't get out of bed, couldn't remember what day it was, couldn't recognize your daughter at first. I watched from under the dresser as they asked you questions you couldn't answer, took your blood pressure, made phone calls. When they finally helped you into a wheelchair, you suddenly looked around the room, your gaze panicked. "Oliver!" you called, your voice stronger than it had been all morning. Beth knelt beside you. "It's okay, Mom. We'll take care of Oliver." "No," you insisted, becoming agitated. "I need to see him, please." Beth looked around helplessly until one of the paramedics spotted me and pointed. "There's a cat under the furniture." Beth coaxed me out, and against my better judgment, I allowed her to pick me up and bring me to you. Your hands, cool and trembling, stroked my head with familiar tenderness. "You be good," you told me firmly. "I'll be back soon." It was the last lie you ever told me, and I loved you for trying to protect me from the truth neither of us could escape. You didn't come back. Beth did, 3 days later, smelling of hospital antiseptic and grief. She sat on your bed and cried, and I watched from the doorway, not ready to accept comfort or give it. "She asked about you," Beth finally said, wiping her eyes. "Right up until the end. Wanted to make sure you'd be okay." I turned and walked away, back to the blue chair that still held your scent, the impression of your body still visible on its worn cushion. The next weeks passed in a blur of strangers and boxes. Beth took some furniture, some photographs. Your sister Margaret came for the piano. Neighbors selected mementos. Through it all, I moved from hiding place to hiding place, emerging only when the house was empty to sleep in the center of your bed. Beth tried. She brought my food bowl into her car, made kissing noises, even tried to bribe me with treats. But we both knew I wouldn't leave. This house, our house, was where your memory lived most vividly, in the coffee cup still sitting on the kitchen counter, in the gardening gloves tossed casually by the back door, in the brush on your dresser that still held strands of your silver hair. "I don't know what to do with him," I heard Beth tell her husband on the phone. "Mum's will specified that Oliver be taken care of, but he won't let anyone near him." Eventually, they came to an arrangement with Lucia, who agreed to stop by daily to leave food and change my litter box. The house would remain empty until it could be sold, and I would remain its solitary guardian, and so I did for 3 more months. I slept in your chair, drank from your favorite teacup that Beth had left behind, watched the seasons change through the windows we used to look through together. I began to slow down. My jumps became less certain, my appetite diminished. At first, I thought it was grief, but then I recognized the familiar signs of age that I'd seen in you. The stiffening joints, the increased need for sleep, the moments of disorientation. Cats know when it's time. We feel it in our bones, in the changing quality of light, in the way memories begin to seem more real than the present moment. My last day, I made my way slowly through each room of our home, saying goodbye to the spaces we'd shared. The kitchen where you'd slip me bits of roast chicken when you thought I wasn't looking. The bathroom where I'd watch you apply lipstick for church on Sundays. The garden where you'd read aloud from your magazines while I chased butterflies that always remained just out of reach. Finally, as evening approached, I settled in your blue chair, curling into the impression your body had left behind. Outside, a light snow was falling, the first of the season. The house was quiet except for the familiar click of the radiator coming to life. As my breathing slowed, I thought I caught your scent, oil of Olay cream and Earl Grey tea, and that indefinable something that was simply perfectly you. And then, as my eyes grew heavy, I heard what sounded like your footsteps in the hallway, the soft shuffle of your slippers against the hardwood floor. "Ollie?" your voice seemed to call. "Are you coming to bed?" I opened my eyes one last time, looking toward the sound. And there, just for a moment, I thought I saw you standing in the doorway, your hand outstretched, your smile as warm and real as it had been on our very best days together. I don't know if what comes after this life is heaven or simply another kind of existence. I don't know if cats have souls the way humans believe they do. But I do know this: love doesn't disappear. It changes form, becomes memory, becomes presence, becomes the warm spot on a pillow or the familiar creak of a floorboard or the feeling that you're not alone, even when all evidence suggests otherwise. Eleanor Sullivan, my person, my heart. Wherever you are now, I hope you can feel me beside you still. I hope you know that in the end, it was a privilege to grow old in the circle of your gentle hands. That every day I spent with you was a gift I never took for granted. That of all the humans in all the world, I'm glad it was you who stopped at my cage that rainy October afternoon. They say animals can't write letters, but love, well, love has always found a way to speak across the distances that words can't bridge. Until we meet again, and we will, I'm certain of it, know that you are missed, you are remembered, and you are loved, still and always. Your faithful companion, Oliver.